Now for the audience, we're going to open it up for questions. So if you all have any questions about sustainable farming, Doug's right there to answer them right from the farmer's mouth, so to speak. Preguntas? I'll start off with one. You had mentioned that you plant grasses to separate your fields from water and keep it like that. How much space do you usually give for retention of the water before it goes into other water resources?
It will depend on the size of whatever type of tributary, whether it's a small stream or a river or anything like that. As a general rule, our minimum grass filter strips will be 60 feet wide, which is approximately 20 meters. Some of the larger rivers that we go against, we go up to around 80 feet, which would be probably in the area of 25 to 30 meters. It just kind of depends on what the grade of the ground is, how heavy the velocity, how high the velocity and speed of that water hitting that filter strip will be, and we kind of tailor them to what the needs are in each individual application.
Thank you.
I have one.
Okay.
Hi, Doug. My name is Fradbelín Escarraman. I'm a contractor for USEC. I cover the Caribbean region. Can you please elaborate on how GMO beans have helped you use less chemicals in the field and how that translates to the environment and more yields and better product?
Yes, thank you. GMO beans or genetically engineered soybeans have helped us a great deal, particularly in more highly erosive areas. They have helped us to be able to farm grounds that we prior would not been able to have farmed without being able to control our soil and nutrient loss. The control measures that it allows us to use and the tolerance to certain herbicides has been a big boon to us, both in highly erosive land and in land such as the flatter fields like is behind me. We have coupled that with integrated pest management or IPM, and we are using a lot less volume of herbicides than what we were, for instance, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, before the introduction of GMO or genetically engineered crops. We've used genetically engineered crops on our farm for about 21 years, and it has been a great reduction in the volume of different control measures that we are having to introduce into the environment, and it has therefore reduced our energy usage. So it's had a great deal of effect. The GMO crops or genetically engineered crops have had a great effect on being able to reduce a bunch of those operating measures that we were using prior to their introduction.
Thank you. Next question.
How long takes in the average the technology to become successful or you can pay for it? And how long do this take? For example, these big machines.
I'm sorry, could you restate? I didn't quite catch that in my.
Maybe I will do it in Spanish. Somebody's going to translate it to become more easier because I don't know one of the words.
Okay, the question is, what's the return on the investment on all that fancy equipment that you guys are using nowadays?
Well, that kind of depends on where the Chicago Board of Trade decides that I'm going to be tomorrow. The price, the rate of return, the combine, the auger buggy we were looking at, we normally figure that we are probably going to run that machine for about 8 years. We figure if we can't get at least a 10 to 15% return on investment over that period, over the life of that machine, then we need to take a really hard look at what we have invested in machinery or what I need to do differently to become more efficient. But normally in a year-to-year return, the farming operation, we hope to come out with about a 10%, on a good year, maybe a 15% profit. It has been lower than that, But that is what we actually strive for, and for our return on investment day in and day out, that's what we normally look for, someplace around 10%. And we look at this equipment life to be someplace around an 8 to 10 year life. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And there was another question that somebody wants to know. You did mention it, but please repeat it again. What is the yield per acre or per hectare that you guys are getting right now?
This particular field, and this is going to be higher than what it has been in prior years. I'm looking this year, I think our soybean crop is probably going to yield someplace around 4 to 5% higher than what our 5-year average is. This particular field at around 65 to 70 bushel per acre is going to be somewhere between 4.25 and 4.5 metric ton per hectare.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for showing us around your farm. I'm Matias Illonis, a chef from Peru. I'm wondering if any of your pesticides, fungicides, or herbicides are organic or produced within the perimeter of your farm.
What we use as far as, let me think how to say this. The herbicides that we use and the fungicides that we use are commercially produced. Some of our IPM measures are organically produced beneficial insects that we use to control different things like aphids, bean leaf beetles, a number of things like that. There are wasps and some predatory flies and some predatory bees that we use to be able to control those. So we kind of use a combination. We're trying to do anything we can to reduce what usage we have to have on commercially produced insecticides or fungicides. I'm sorry, insecticides are the easiest, and fungicides and herbicides. One of the things that we also incorporate into the farm is crop rotation, and that we found that that's very beneficial in being able to control a lot of the pests and from any type of pests, as far as some of the fungicides, some of the leaf diseases, some of the insects that we encounter, some of the weeds. This field behind you will be in corn next year, or maize, I guess as it's called in your country. And we found out that we use a corn-soybean rotation greatly reduces what we have to do from year to year as far as pest control measures. Some of the more highly erosive ground that we were talking about earlier, the more of the hill ground and the rolling ground, we use a corn-soybean wheat rotation, bringing wheat in on that ground every third year. In addition to being a good cover crop, that uses a lot less it controls a lot of our soil erosion with being able to hold that in place, and we plant directly into that residue. One of the other things we've done that has been very beneficial as an organic measure has been, and something we're trying for the first time this year, it's just been tried in our area a couple of years, is the use of cover crops. We're going to plant a combination of a cereal rye and a radish. The cereal rye will go about shoulder high on me, and you plant into the standing crop. And the radish will die out over the winter time because it'll freeze out. We get down fairly cold, down around 10 degrees or 0 in our part of the country in the winter time. But the tillage radish will grow, before that time, it will grow 15 to 16 inches down in the surface, and it helps break up part of the hard pan underneath there, and it improves the soil drainage by loosening it up. And then the cereal rye on top of the ground holds that crop in place. Once we have planted the soybeans or the corn into that cover crop, then we will come through and we kill that cover crop off. But it also aids a great deal in weed control. We found out that it's not necessary to use some of the initial burn down products that we need to be able to kill it off, that the maturing and the die down on that crop, in addition to the other benefits, will also have a tendency to control a lot of the weed growth by not preventing, by intercepting sunlight before a lot of those seedlings the weed seedlings can get it and grow.
Doug, this is Mark again. Back on the sustainability subject, did you become sustainable all at once, or was it a gradual process?
No, Referring to what I said before about sustainability being a continuous improvement process, sustainability from the very beginning has been a continuous learning process. From the first years, from 15 years ago when we first started hearing sustainability as kind of a catchword, or as our customers began to request and demand more sustainability in our production, we began to look at a lot of the ways that we were doing things and fine tune those. But one of the things, American farmers, I'm a fifth generation farmer. I remember what my grandfather did, what my father taught me. I farmed with my brother for a number of years before he retired last year. A lot of the things as far as what are now considered sustainable have been in practice for the past 80 to 100 years in farming. My great-great-grandfather started out in 1865, and so we've been at this a long time, and it's been a constant process of learning, what works, what doesn't work. For many years it was more trial and error or experimentation to try to learn what we needed to do right, what we needed that was going to be the most economical fit along with the most profitable fit. So we've done a number of things. It's like I said, it's been a continual learning process. I think probably over the last 15 to 20 years, we began to concentrate more on documenting what we do. A lot of what we did that was sustainable was just what my grandfather always termed the right way to farm it.
Thank you. When you were showing us around all your equipment, we saw the storage bins, the silos behind you. How much can you store there?
This particular system will store about 110,000 bushels. That will be about approximately 25 to 30% of what we will grow this year. On the different farming operations that I operate, we have two more storage systems, one substantially smaller than this, one that is approximately equal to it. But we are, with all the storage systems that I have, the grain bins systems that we utilize, I can store about 75 to 80% of my crop in an average year.
Great. And talking
The
along
rest
that,
of it,
go ahead, sorry.
the rest of it we deliver to river terminal elevators that are approximately 45 miles from here in the fall when we harvest the crop.
Okay. Is there a formula that when you decide to plant your crops, whether it's corn or soybean, that you sell or do futures on anything right off the bat, like 30%, and then 30% later, or 40%?
Yes, I have a fairly regimented marketing plan. I normally like to have, by the time the crop's in the ground, I like to have 25 to 30% of that crop, the price on that crop locked down. Now that is entirely contingent on what I think my profit levels are, because I go through in the winter and the off season, and that's a lot of my office time is spent figuring out what my break-even price on that crop is, what my inputs are going to run, because I can lock down my inputs at the beginning of the year by prepaying or advance paying those, and lock down my price for fertilizer or my price for the other inputs, my price for seed. I figure those all into actually use an Excel spreadsheet designed by my wife, who's a certified public accountant, and my right hand especially as far as financial counseling. But we start with the break-even price, and we figure that we want to start in with a 10% profit. Anytime that we can make over that 10% profit, we start contracting. Like I said, I normally around the 30% range is what I look for before we have the crop in the ground. By the time we see what type of stand or what type of population we have in the crop, 60 days after planting, we begin to get some idea of what our establishment is. At that time, if the prices are in nearly a break-even area, or like I said, in that 10% above range, we'll probably go ahead and move that marketed quantity up to around 50%. At this time of year, currently this year, that we're about 30 days out from full swing harvest, I am currently around 65 to 70% priced on what the crop is, taking advantage of some of the summer rallies that came along in corn and soybeans when we had some dry weather. Normally we'll leave about 30%, 25 to 30% of that crop when it goes in the bin will be unpriced, but it will be closer to 90% by January of this year.
Thank you. From the audience, are there any more questions? Okay, well, Doug, I want to thank you. This has been very, very helpful. Thank you for talking to the audience and them having a chance to see your farm live and all the information you've given us on sustainability and how you do your operations. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure talking with you.